You're listening to America House Spooky Podcast, our series of Halloween campfire stories to get you into a spooky mood. This episode's story is entitled The Lady in the Veil and read by Scott Whitmore. Keep listening if you dare.
The Lady in the Veil. He had not expected to meet the woman of his dreams, but there she was, strolling along in the moonlight beside the cemetery. Carlos quickened his pace until he was level with her, hoping for a glimpse of her face under her veil. Carlos made a few remarks about the beautiful night and the lovely weather, anything to keep her talking. She stopped abruptly and turned to face him. He caught a glimpse of dark eyes glinting behind the veil. "What is it you want?" she asked. "A date, señorita, just a date." Carlos beamed at her. She paused and said, "I do not know. Ask me again in this place at this time tomorrow night, and we shall see." Carlos's heart leapt in his chest. So she was playing hard to get. Well, fair enough. He would see her tomorrow, and then she would fall into his arms. The next day dragged by for the infatuated Carlos, and he had trouble concentrating on his work. But at last he was free and running the few blocks to his home to change into a suitable outfit. He could barely contain himself, and he reached the cemetery a few minutes early. She was not there yet, so Carlos entertained himself by picturing his beautiful bride in their new home. Suddenly, she was there in front of him. The moonlight sparkled off her veil. Carlos was enchanted. They talked for hours, standing in front of the graveyard. She was as witty as she was beautiful, and Carlos begged her for a date. "We will go out tomorrow night," she said. "I will send you a letter with the place and time." Carlos kissed her hand and floated away, so happy he wanted to sing for joy. Carlos was absolutely useless at work the next day. After work, he rushed home and found a letter in his mailbox. Eagerly he read it, not pausing to wonder how she knew where he lived. Then he ran next door to show it to Diego, his closest cousin. Diego went pale when he read her signature, Rosa Gonzalez. This must be the same Rosa that died in a car crash last year. Diego tried to warn Carlos, but Carlos was already in love. That night, as Carlos hurried to the cemetery, Diego followed, certain that his cousin was in over his head. Carlos bounded over to Rosa. "At last, we go out," he cried to her. "But first, my love, show me your face." At his words, Rosa pulled aside the veil. Back at the gate, Diego gave a gasp of shock, for she had the desiccated face of a skeleton. He was frozen to the spot by the power of the evil specter, unable to warn Carlos. Looking down, Carlos only saw the glamour the ghost was projecting. As the skeleton's withered arms trapped him, the veil on his eyes was lifted, and he realized in one heart-stopping moment the abomination he was kissing. The ground opened up, and with a laugh of triumph, the specter pulled him down and down into her tomb. The earth closed over Carlos and Rosa. Diego, freed from the ghost spell, ran into the cemetery, shouting his cousin's name in terror, but it was too late. Carlos was dead, locked for all time in Rosa's arms.
Ghostly greetings, everyone. It's American Spooky Stories podcast from America House Cave. My name is Anna. I'm from America House, and here is Scott with me from the US Embassy. Thank you, Scott, for sharing the stories and reading it for us. Let's discuss some vocabulary, but before that, I have a question. What do you think about the story, and is it possible to be so enchanted with someone or something in this case? What are your impressions?
This is a classic kind of fire, like a camp story, a camp horror story that you tell some people around a campfire because it's short, it's kind of spooky, but not that spooky, and it doesn't have a lot of plot, but it tells a lot of story in a little bit. And I think it makes kind of not a joke, but it's a pun on the love is blind, or you're so in love with someone that you can't even see the faults. So maybe there's a deeper meaning that the person didn't care about all the shortcomings of that person. So it could be like an allegory or like kind of a message for true love isn't about the beauty of somebody. But I think it's maybe that's digging a little bit too deep. I think it's just a horror story where the kid is so desperate for love that he's willing to go marry or be in love with someone that's going to take him down to the grave forever. And it was okay. It was a little scary.
Maybe if you analyze any spooky story, there is some deep meaning behind that. It's an interesting point. Is this character, Rosa Gonzalez, sounds familiar, or you've heard it for the first time?
I've never heard this story before, so it's new to me. But it's similar to, there's like a boy and a girl are out camping or out parking in a car, and they get a radio report of somebody escaping the mental asylum, and all of a sudden, the man with a hook in front of the car. So it's sort of that kind of theme, that kind of idea. Yeah.
Yeah, we are having a few more stories to read, and in other podcasts, guys, you can hear the story that Scott just discussed in the
it's a classic
in a related plot. Yes, yeah. We are discussing these classics. So let's go deeper into vocabulary, because some of the words are from advanced level. And so there was a sentence in the story. He caught a glimpse of dark eyes glinting behind the veil. So what does glinting mean?
Yeah, so a glint, there's a lot of ways you can use it. It's a great word. So a glint in one's eyes is a more common expression, but a glint refers to usually in eyes, and it's like that look of sort of mischief or some kind of a deeper meaning, or it literally means like a flash of light or like a reflection. Like if you look at a glass and there's like shadows or reflections in a glass, that's sort of like a glint, like when light hits it. So that's what glint means, but it's usually referred to eyes, a glint in one's eyes, and it can be something mischievous, like there's a glint in your eyes, you're up to something. If you have little kids, like there's something going on here, you're not telling me something. So that's one way to use it, but it's a great word, and it's not commonly used, and most people won't use it in everyday speech, but it's good if it's a little bit higher level, I think, English, American English, or English in general. If you're looking to use an idiom, a glint in one's eyes is the idiom that you would want to use in this case.
So it's common in literature than in everyday life?
Yeah, you'll see it in literature, but you can use it in real life. You can use it in everyday conversation. Again, mostly usually parents about their kids or about smaller kids, like when there's someone being mischievous or if there was, somebody being kind of, up to something that's not really clear, like some kind of playing a trick or being kind of trying to be funny or something. There's a glint in one's eyes, like there's something not being said that the person wants to say, and it's being shown in the eyes.
Okay, got it. The next word is infatuated. And in the story, it was the next day dragged by the infatuated Carlos. So what it means when the person is infatuated? Yeah,
so this is the key word here, and it shows to the reader that Carlos is not just in love, but he's infatuated, meaning he's so deeply, emotionally, like kind of, there's no reason to it. It's just all emotion. It's infatuated means so totally in love with something or someone that all reason and all kind of logic goes out the window. And so that's a key word, I think, for in a good use of this word here, because it tells the reader very quickly and very clearly that Carlos is not thinking very clearly. He's thinking with love in mind and in emotions, but not with logic and not with, so passion takes over his logical and higher power reasoning skills. So that to be infatuated or infatuation is, again, a word that you wouldn't necessarily use in everyday speech, but you can use it. You can use it and people will understand, like, what's with the infatuation. It's usually meant to something that's short-lived, something, and parents, again, will probably use it. It's like, oh, that's just an infatuation. It's just something will pass. So like your teenage daughter comes home and he just loves the quarterback for the football team. It's like, she's just infatuated with him, but next week she'll be moving on to something else. So it's something kind of parents look at it, I think, from a short-term point of view, but it's a good word though. We're definitely one well selected here for the reader.
What are antonyms that you can choose for this word?
Oh, infatuation, the opposite. Detest, like I detest someone, but it's more abhor. I'm trying to think of something emotionally, irrationally hating something, because that's the opposite. I mean, it's the opposite of like emotional or illogical love is what infatuation is. So the opposite would be like, to test, abhorrence.
Something reasonable, or it's
nothing.
Different?
It's just a lot of emotion behind it. Like to detest something is to hate something so much that you just, you can't even stand to look at the person. It's just disgusting. To abhorrent is another, like just the mere thought of that thing or person is just doesn't, fills you with kind of a hatred and a disgust for them.
Okay, and the next phrase I picked is, I think, kind of related to the one we discussed. So what does it mean to be over someone's head?
Yeah, so to be in over your head, I mean, this was a good idiom. And it's funny how with idioms, you kind of take it for granted that everybody knows what it is. But I had to think about what it actually where it came from. There's two thoughts. One could be that the head is your reasoning. It's the highest level of your abilities. And if you're above that, then it means you're beyond your abilities to solve it, or you're within your limits of solving it. I chose to look at it more like in swimming terms, like to be swimming and you're in over your head, meaning you're potentially drowning. Like, so I look at it from a visual standpoint. Either way, the idea means that somebody has taken on something that they don't have the skills or the ability to actually handle with, so that's the idea of being in and over one's head. And it's like, Scott, he just got hired as a new manager, but he's in over his head. He has no idea what's going on at work, and he's not going to succeed because he just can't do the job. That would be how you'd use it, in a sentence.
It's pretty clear. Thank you.
Do you have something like that in Ukrainian? Okay. Well, we'll think about that one. I always like learning new idioms, but I guess this is for English learners, not for Ukrainian learners.
The next word is desiccated, if I'm saying it right.
Yep.
And in the story, we heard that the desiccated face of a skeleton. So is it something lifeless or scary, or what does it mean?
Yeah, so the funny thing with desiccated, when I saw this word, it's not a common word. And I like to cook, and the word that I associate it, or that I see it with, is desiccated coconut, which means dry. That's all it means, is dried out. And so when they sell coconut, they'll often it'll be written desiccated coconut shavings, or whatever they call it, or like flour pieces. And so desiccated just means dried up, withered. I mean, I think they use withered later, but desiccated means just dried, and sort of like when you dehydrate I don't know, let's say a tomato, and it just gets all like kind of gnarly and leathery and stiff, so something that used to be plump and vibrant and very rich looking is now just kind of like a piece of leather. I think of like a piece of leather, a piece of bark, very dry, very stiff. So that's what desiccated means, but not a common word that you really use.
One more definition I found for the desiccated is lacking vitality or interest.
Yeah. So vitality in this case, like that freshness that I was saying, like something like, think of like a fruit that's ripe and fully mature and delicious, and like a plum. Wow, that's a good one. A plum is ripe and full of vitality. A prune would be a desiccated plum. So it's, think of a prune. It's dry, it's withered, it's tough. That's yuck. Yeah, it's not good.
Moving forward, the word specter was in the story for a few times, and it was about the lady. So what is the synonym to this word?
So specter can be a lot of things. It can be a ghost. It can be an image of like a kind of a, not just, doesn't have necessarily mean negative or death. I mean, it can be that. I think there's many meanings, like the specter of doom. I guess it is sort of a negative connotation overall. So we use it in English, not just with like a noun, but like a ghost, but it can be like the specter of the coming war was filling our lives with fear as we thought about all, so the specter, this image or this idea, this sort of something dark and gloomy that's kind of hanging above us. Yeah, withered is the next one, I think, and that's a similar to desiccated. To desiccate, yeah.
Yeah, and in the story, a skeleton's withered arms trapped Carlos. What kind of arms are those?
Yeah, so they're, again, withered is like lacking of all muscle and kind of skin and just kind of limp, weak, what you'd expect exactly what a skeleton looks like. So just something that's wasted away, a lot of the vitality of it. So again, it's very similar to desiccation.
Can you use this word to describe my hand or like a person who's alive, or it's only...
You wouldn't want to, yeah, it would be kind of... You can also use it, I mean, there's another way, like a withering look is sort of like, to give someone a withering look means sort of like, it's kind of critical. Like it's a complicated usage, but it's be careful with the word, because definitely don't use it with people that are alive. You wouldn't want to say you have a withered look. I mean, you might want to say it if you really are concerned about someone's health, like you're withering away, meaning you look really thin or you're pale or you're, that would be, but even then it would be something more serious than like you look tired. It's something more, it involves something serious so if you're using it about someone alive, be careful. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I won't use this word for people who
they
are
won't be
alive.
infatuated with you for much longer if you use that word.
And the last word is abomination. So Carlos was kissing abomination.
Yeah, abomination is like this sort of disgusting, abhorrent, evil, not even just evil looking, but something disgusting looking creation. An abomination is something that just doesn't look normal and something that looks completely disfigured or like a force from another world or something. It's a super force. Yeah. So
most words from today have not nice meanings, but it's Halloween.
Well, infatuation is good, and glint. To have a glint in one's eye, that's good. In over your head is, I think, a good one. But yeah, I mean, this is Halloween, so you want to stick to the scarier, more kind of, not negative, but spooky words.
And do you know like some common words to use for Halloween, like spooky, creepy?
Spooky, scary, boo. Spooky and scary, creepy. Those are like words that describe Halloween. I guess I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I don't have any other words like with Halloween. Yeah.
I like boo.
Boo. Yeah.
That's for advanced learners.
That's right. It's a very, very tricky word. Spelling is very difficult. That's all I can think of.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, for explaining all the words. And we've been wrapping up now. Guys, if you want to hear more stories, please check out our other podcasts. And I have a joke for the ending. So, why didn't the skeleton go to the Halloween party? I
don't know. Why didn't the skeleton go to the Halloween party?
Because he has no body to go.
Oh, wah, wah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
I guess he was in over his head, or he had no head.
Thank you guys for being with us, and I wish you happy Halloween.
Oh.